Hi, this is Tamara at mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to make the edging for the Tidal Wave Shawl. Now, if you want to make the main portion of the Tidal Wave Shawl itself, please check the description or the links below to get the link to the pattern. In this video, I will be concentrating on the edging only because there is a previous video on how to do the rest of the shawl. You can see some pictures here sliding by of how the shawl looks when it's finished. For this video, of course, I'll just be making a small representation. For this video, I'll be using Lion Brand's LB Collection 100% Superwash Merino and a furls hook. So let me go ahead and set those aside and we'll get started. Now, before I actually crochet, I want to pull up just a piece of paper here and a marker, and I'm going to draw out the shape that occurs when you crochet the Tidal Wave Shawl. Now you start from a point at the bottom. Let me make sure I'm on camera here. There we go. And as it grows, you've got two increases happening on one side that creates a curve and a decrease happening on the other that also creates a curve. So as you work, and of course this will flip over as you turn your work, but you've got one side that curves a lot and the other side curves in just a little bit. This is the increase side and this is the decrease side. Now, obviously, since you're working in rows, that side will be straight. When you've gotten to the size of shawl you want, you're going to turn it to create the triangle shawl. So this is the increase side, remember, and this becomes the top of the shawl. The decrease side would become the left side. There we are. And that straight edge, that top row, becomes the right side of the shawl. So that will help you when you're working the border. So let's go ahead and set that aside. And here I'll pull up my tiny little sample shawl that I've made. Now in the written pattern, which again is linked in the description or below, then I recommend that you keep a stitch marker on one side just to help you as you crochet, especially at the beginning when it's not as obvious which side is the increases and which is the decreases. Just pick a side. In this case, it's the decreases that has the stitch marker, so I can always tell at a glance. If I lay that out, hopefully you can see there's our big curve, that's our increase side. Our little curve, that's our decrease side. And when we're done crocheting, we turn it this way. We've got the top, the left, and the right. And of course, this grows out and becomes quite a bit more even as you go. But it does have one long arm here that you can use to sort of, be handy if I had a Barbie here, huh? To sort of wrap around like a shawl like that. And you can pin it closed or however you like. So for now, let's get back to that edging. What I'm going to do is pull up a contrast color of yarn right here, like so. And I'm going to join to the very last stitch made. So this shawl ends with an odd numbered row, and you don't turn after that last row. So I've got, I think, 9 rows here. So I'm just going to go ahead and join to that last stitch I made in the last row. You could join with a slip stitch or you can join with single crochet, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to go ahead and join with a slip stitch here. Then I am going to work 2 single crochets in that stitch. You can see I kind of went into the corner of it rather than just at the top. That's because I'm going to work across the top of the shawl, which is that increase edge first. So I've got my 2 single crochets right there in that last stitch of the last row. I'll just hold my tail ends out of the way there until they're tucked away. Then I'm going to work across that increase edge. Now, to work across this edge, I'm going to do something a little different. Rather than trying to work lots of stitches, I'm going to chain 2, like so. I'm going to skip the whole rest of that first, or, well, last row, and then I'm going to work a single crochet right at the top of the stitch of the next row. Then that's how I'm going to work all the way across. Chain 2, skip the rest of that stitch, find the top of the stitch in the next row, and work a single crochet right there. Obviously, it helps very much if you are able to read your stitches a little bit, but you can also just eyeball it. Chain 2, whoops. If you're not good at reading your stitches yet, you can chain 2, and then just see where that naturally lays. Where would the next single crochet naturally be so that it's not puckering or ruffling at all? And just continue on down the side. Oops. Got my little instructions there. They were trying to run away from me so I could remember and make sure to tell you all exactly the same thing here since it's been a while since I made it. So as I said, I'm just going to continue on down across the top of the shawl here. We chain 2, If we turn it this way, it might be a little easier to see. You can see that's a row right here, right? And there's the top of the stitch. You can see the bottoms of the stitches in the next row coming into that space. That is where we want to put our single crochet. And you can see this gives us just a really nice sort of decorative edge right along the edge there. And it's not gathering, it's not too tight, it's not too loose, it's not creating big loops hanging off the side of the work. Oops, finish that one there. So eventually you'll come down to the point here, down here. That is where you began your shawl, where your slip knot probably is. So when you get to that point, which I am almost at, looks like I've got one more chain 2 to go here. Okay, so when I get to that point right there, I'm going to work 3 single crochets right in that point right there. Let's pull back to the center of the screen here. 1, going right back into that same space. Oops. 2 and 3. And this lets us turn the corner there. Now remember, as we were crocheting, it was growing this way. So we've worked across the top. Now we're going to work down the left side. And on this side, we are going to do the same thing we did for the top. We chain 2. And because we're starting from the bottoms of the rows rather than kind of coming from the tops down, we're starting at the bottoms going up, chain 2, and then just go ahead and work one right in the side of that same last row there, right at the top. And then, oops, keep dropping my stitches today. There we are, 2. And then jump up to the top of the next row and work your single crochet there. And again, you can eyeball it, just try and be as consistent as you can be as you work up the side of the row. Sometimes I have to stop and give it a few seconds look myself to see exactly where I want that stitch to go in. But hopefully this gives you a good idea of how to make this border. And I really like this border because, especially when you've got an edge like this, where you want to work a contrast color, but it might not look perfectly even because of the different types of stitches on each side. This is a great way to get a really even looking border without having to put a whole lot of effort into it. And don't we love it when crochet is just that much easier? So here I am. I have gotten, you can see this is my last row I made. There's the top of that first decrease that I started that last row with. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish with a single crochet in there. And then all we have left to do is the border for the right side of the shawl, right there. So I'm going to start, I've put 1 single crochet in that one right there. So then I am going to put 2 more in there because this is a corner. Sorry, I'm just checking my instructions again. It's been a little while since I made this shawl, so I want to make sure I get it right for you. So we've got 3 single crochets in that corner, and then I'm just going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and single crochet in the one after that. Now, depending on whether or not you made every single row of this pattern as written, or if you customized the length a little bit, maybe change the number of rows because you just used a different weight of yarn, then this may not work out perfectly, skipping 2 every time. You may need to fudge it a little bit, and that's okay. Most people aren't going to be looking that closely at it, especially as you're wearing it. Now let's see, for instance, with this one, because I stopped at row 9, I don't have the right number of stitches. So what I can do, normally I would skip 2, single crochet in the next one. Then I would need 2 more to skip so I could get over to this corner. So I have a couple options. I could skip 2, single crochet in the next one, and then, because it's right where I want to be, just go ahead and slip stitch there. Normally I would end with end with a single crochet in this space, which would make a third one, completing that corner. Remember, we started with 2, so I would add 1 more. But in this case, I might just go ahead and put 1 in the one before and then slip stitch and call it good, because I think that would lay really evenly. If for whatever reason you don't feel like that one would work out for your project, the size of your stitches, what you could do is just skip 1, put the stitch there, and maybe chain 1, and then join up again. Unless someone sits down and really studies your stitches, basically another crocheter, no one would ever spot that you had to fudge that little ending right there. And that's something we have to do a lot with borders and edgings. but if you make this one as written, it should work out without having to fudge the edging too. So I hope this has helped you make a border for your own tidal wave shawl and that you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, let us know what you think in the comments, and please do subscribe to our channel.